Hello, my name is Roger Meyer. Over the last 12 years, I've been involved in two lawsuits, one with the Minster Farmers Co-op and the other one with Crop Production Services. We found a lot of really interesting and illegal things that were going on. My problem originally started when Dave Riker, the manager at Minster Farmers, broke an agreement with me in about 2001. It cost me $41,000. He refused to make it right. I went to the board. They refused to help. So I decided I'm just going to let a small bill at the elevator, and sooner or later somebody's going to have to do something about it. But prior to that, I had realized that they were compounding interest, and they were charging above the statutory rate of interest, which are both illegal. I was told that by my attorney, who does most of my legal work. This is back in the 1980s, right after he graduated from law school. In 2005, Minster Farmers filed a suit against me, claiming I owed them $55,583. But my attorney saw right away too that they were illegally charging above the statutory rate of interest, and they were also compounding interest. We ended up going to the appeals court. The first issue was on the compounding of interest. The second one was on charging above the statutory rate of interest. The appeals court ruled you cannot compound interest, but they said it was okay to charge above the statutory rate of interest. I asked my attorney, Brian Meyer, what we had to do. And he said, nothing. He says, anytime a higher court overrules a lower court, the lower court has to do exactly whatever the higher court says. No ands, ifs, ors, or buts about it. No arguing. Just do it. So then he said, too, if we win in the Supreme Court, he said, whatever the Supreme Court says goes. Well, we won in the Supreme Court, too, because they went back on a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that stated that you cannot charge above the statutory rate of interest unless you have an agreement to do so. So they came up with a the time when they were supposed to start calculating interest. And I got a Supreme Court ruling, but it gets kind of complicated. But when the case was remanded back to the Common Pleas Court, Judge Stevenson says, accordingly, it is the opinion of this court that the Ohio Supreme Court determined that the interest rate in this case is limited to the statutory amount calculated from the beginning of the account, not from the last day of the zero balance. So we had to go back, or they were supposed to go back to when I started doing business with Minster Farmers. It was during my deposition. It says, our records reflect that you have been a member since August of 1988. Do you agree with that? I'm not for sure. I've done business with them since the mid-70s. And I did a little figuring. I was able to go back to where I'd done business for sure as early as 1973. So they hired an accounting firm, Meyer, and they were supposed to go back to when I first started doing business, in 1973. But Jim Stevenson, the judge, said they didn't have to start until 1988. So guess when they started? December of 1998. 10 years after I became a member, where Stevenson said we had to start figuring the interest, and also 25 years after the time that I first started doing business, like the Supreme Court said we had to do. And if you don't think that interest rates add up real quick, especially when they're illegally compounding interest, it went from, in 2005, from $55,000 some odd dollars to 1997, where they said I owed them $97,000. Just a little over $97,000. Then I calculated out the way they were figuring things up until 2008, when Meyer recalculated the interest and what my payment, or what I should owe them. came up to $123,000. And if they would have went back to the very beginning and done like they were supposed to, it would have showed where I should have been getting money back from Minster farmers. But they refused to do it. Now, I had an attorney that I really trusted, and I expected him to do what he was required to do. Why did he let it go until 1998 before they finally started refiguring the interest instead of 1973 where they were supposed to start it? Even 1988. I remember back when I was in grade school, one of my teachers asked the class if we would work for her for 30 days. Starting out the first day for a penny, double the wages the second day to 2 cents, then to 4 cents the third day, then 8 cents, and do that for 30 days. Would you work for me if I offered you a deal like that? Just think about it for a minute. We'll come back to that. Here's, on March the 26th of 2008, the Supreme Court ruled in our favor. And it said, our determination that Minster farmers was limited to charging the statutory rate contained in RC 5703-.47 moots Minster farmers' cross appeal. And this is something that came from Jim Stevenson, the judge. Accordingly, is the opinion of the court that the Ohio Supreme Court determined that the interest rate in this case is limited to the statutory amount calculated from the opening of the account, not from the last day of zero. And he even admitted they had to go back to the day I opened the account. 1973, these papers show 1998. So things were never done right. The judge did not do what he was supposed to do. My attorney did not do what he was supposed to do. The elevator's attorney also did not do what he was supposed to. Now, there's something else we found out. Had a friend of mine also had problems with the interest they were charging, and he had a lawsuit with them. And he called me up one day and he said, "Come on over." He says, "I want to show you something." So he showed me these two invoices. Well, it might be kind of hard for it. I'm going to try to move them around just a little bit. But looking at these two invoices, this one up here is a reprint of this one, which is the original. And a reprint or a copy, which is the same thing, should be exactly the same as the original. Okay, now we'll take a look at this. When he showed it to me, it took me forever, and I never did figure out the differences. And I showed it to dozens of people, and nobody, with the exception of 3 accountants, was able to find all the mistakes, or find any of the mistakes. Now, if you look at the reprint, across the top it says Minster Farmers. It has 4 of the branches listed. This one has 5. So, if you put this one in the printer, it should come up this way. It should not show 4 branches up here. Then let's go down here to the terms down at the bottom. Just real quick glance, you can see they're completely different. Even the wording is different. And I will also go over to the right on this one here. You'll see there's a 50 on it. Now, if you look at the bottom of this page, nowhere down here is there a 50. And now we'll slip up to the nursing formula. The original has a number on it, 4951. That's it. If you look at this nursing formula number, well, that's actually a number over here too, but you can see this one here's got about a 10-digit number in front of the nursing formula. There's 4 big differences, and they should be exactly the same. So that meant Minster Farmers is running 2 illegal sets of books. When I showed that to laid these papers on the table, my accountants, I said, "What do you see?" And right away he said, "There's 2 sets of books, one being an illegal set." Well, while all this was going on, Minster Farmers is trying everything to get me to settle. They said, oh, just give us a little bit of money and we'll forget it. And I said, no. I lost $41,000 in that broken contract. And as my grandpa, Henry Meyer, always says, stand up for your rights, don't ever back down, and stand up for the rights of other people. So I would not back down. So, well, they thought it'd be real smart to try to foreclose on me. So to keep that from happening, I had to come up with a $56,000 cash bond. And so we had right away $41,000 loss. We had a $56,000 cash bond I had to come up with. I paid a lot more in legal fees than that $41,000. Yeah, it was a heck of a lot more. And at the same time, I was trying to put my kids through college. That 1 year alone, my college bills were $80,000. And I couldn't borrow anything because what Minster Farmers did to my credit, they ruined it. So I ended up, the money that I would have used to prepay all my chemicals and fertilizer and everything else earlier that year, I had to let it go until fall so I could get the kids through college. The best decision I ever made. Then I found out, well, I was started dealing with crop production, and I didn't catch it right away. It took me quite a few years. But I did find out after a while that they were charging more interest than what the agreement called for. This credit agreement says they were allowed to charge 18% interest. Now you see that piece of tape up there, that just covers up part of my Social Security number. But if you get looking, here's one statement showing they were charging 24% interest. Here's another statement showing 24% interest. They admitted they were charging the interest rate higher than what they were allowed to. So after about 7 or 8 years of this, I finally caught on, and I was also tipped off by somebody from crop production. And I did a little figuring, and I figured about how much I would overpaid in interest, and the cash discounts I would have got. So that's why I stopped paying. Now there's one thing I found here that was really kind of interesting. And if you look at these invoices, and there's just one invoice and the rest are statements, and you will see there is a difference. And this, well, I'm just going to let you guys look at this for just a little bit and see if you can tell me what the difference is. Because this is something that people need to be able to look for and see, which most people will never catch this. But as I'll let you look at these others, I'll slip back a couple pages. I'm not a good speaker. I'm hoping you guys can put up with me, because when I get done, I'm going to try to give you just a rough summary of what all was going on. Crop production said on November 25th, 2015, I owed them $30,182. And that was at the rate of interest that they were not allowed to be charging. So they did take it back to the 18%, supposedly to the 18%. And it showed months later, I only owed them a little over $28,000. So they took over $2,000 off for what they had overcharged. Now, all these years, they were constantly overcharging, and you figured that everything up. I did not owe them a penny. But they refused to turn over any of the discoveries. I asked several times. I asked crop production. There's a guy there by the name of Jeff Yulenhanke, and he admitted that they were illegally charging interest. And see, I wish I could find my paper back. See, I'm pretty bad at this kind of stuff. But twice I asked crop production for a discovery, and I asked their attorney, Snavely, one time for a discovery. And the law says that anybody can ask at any time for a discovery. And if an attorney refuses to turn over a discovery, which Snavely did in this case, he did give me the invoices from 2014. I asked for everything from the time I started dealing with crop production back in 2007 up until today. And the only other thing he gave me was a copy of the credit agreement. Now, if he would have given me everything, we could have, figured out exactly to the penny how much they owe me or I owe them, whatever. But now, for an attorney knowing that he will lose his license for refusing to turn this over, and I had an attorney tell me, too, that he will lose his license. That's just for one of the things that he's done. Now, if you get looking at these statements and invoices, I got them kind of stapled together so it'd be a lot easier for me to just kind of hold them in place. But if you start up here at the top, this one here has my correct address on it, and account number 1088318. Go down to the next one. The account number is the same. Now we go down to an invoice. It has a different account number, 74302105. My address is Rishua Howe 45363. They have on here 45364, and there is no such thing as a 45364 number. And if you look down here at the bottom, the area code is 330. That's about 150 miles from here. Ours is a 937. And we'll slip down here to this one. It shows also the 45364, but it has a different account number, 743-02105. That makes this one account, this an account, and I can't say for sure on this one up here, because they may have eventually, when it went over to Greenville, changed the account number. But if you also look at this one right here, you will see that they have the right area code, and they also have a different customer number. Anytime, the numbers are the same, but anytime there's any change whatsoever from what they tell me, just by adding that hyphen, it makes it a separate account. And then you go back to my correct address, so that from what I can see and what I've been told, there are 3 separate accounts in my name. Why would that be? Whereas there's got to be something going on, and it does look extremely fishy. And there's one other thing I found. Crop production was charging 2% interest. In this case, they charged me $390.07 for interest for 1 month. At 2% interest, that comes up to a principal balance of $19,500 and some odd dollars. Now, Snavely also, it took me a couple tries to get him to send this spreadsheet, but on the spreadsheet, it shows a principal balance of $24,577.95, $5,000 more. These 2 principal balances, there's $5,000 difference. Why is that? Where did they come up with that extra money, or where did it go? Maybe we found Minster farmers running 2 illegal sets of books. Could crop production be doing the same thing? There is definitely something wrong. Every accountant I've showed this to says there is multiple accounts in your name. Why should there be? Then, when I make a payment at crop production, since it's usually a pretty decent sized bill, I always have a habit of driving in and I pay it myself. And you got to remember, Crop Production Services is owned by Agrion, the biggest farm company in the world. Now, why would a company that big use little receipts like this? They just stamp the crop production on there, write out the check number and whatever. Now, don't even know for sure where these checks go. Could there be something that shows the difference between these two principal balances? Could they go someplace else? Could be stuff added to it? Was there something done to change these figures to make things come out right? I have no idea. And I don't know who to go to. I hope somebody out there can tell me. And you are more than welcome to use any of this stuff I have here. And you can turn it into anybody you want to in the road to try to get this mess straightened up. And I ended up having to pay crop production $36,550, which I probably never owed them a penny of it. Without the all the invoices and statements, I can't say for sure, but ballpark figure, I don't know them anything. And they tried going to my banks and taking or locking up all the money in my checking accounts. But after a stupid thing that old Snavely did, when he turned in some paperwork to the clerk of courts, he put my social security number on here. Now, this is covered up with tape, so nobody can see it. But you can see the last 4 numbers of my social security. Now, an attorney is not allowed to give any information like that out. And it's also up to the clerk of court's office to double check to make sure nothing does get put out. And when we caught this, I called in right away, and oh boy, they were all excited, and they had it on the website, and within 10 minutes, it was off. And if you look here at the top, you can see where we picked it up on the website. And the reason it's kind of like it looks a little funny, is because we had it on a Chromebook that was not hooked up to a printer. So we ended up having to get a camera, and we took several pictures, this being one of them. So there's a couple things that they screwed up on. And that's the reason there's no money left in my accounts. And to this day, I still cannot keep any money in my accounts because I don't know who the heck got a hold of this information. And here's the paper that shows that there is no such thing as a 45364 zip code. But then while we're talking about the clerk of courts, I got one other little thing I'd like to bring up. I had a friend who was watching the clerk's website, and she noticed where I had a notice of a hearing. And it was postmarked, or rather filed on June the 28th. The hearing was for 9 o'clock on July the 11th. Now, if you look at the date this letter was stamped, it was July the 6th, 8 days after it was filed. It was supposed to be sent out immediately. It was postmarked on the 7th. I received it on July the 11th. The hearing was at 9 o'clock in the morning. My mailman does not come until after 10. Now, why it took them so long to get it out, I don't know. Maybe they just didn't want me there. It's hard to say. Could have been a complete accident, too. But then after we won in the appeals court and the Supreme Court, all we had to do was get a firm to come in, which is Meyer, and refigure the interest. That shouldn't have taken over a couple of hours. And they set up a new date for a new trial, which I think was September the 18th. That trial was, I won it, but because the jury screwed up, it was considered a mistrial. So we was going to do all that all over again. But it shows where my attorney charged me $13,000. And basically all they did was argue back and forth in court and things that should have never been done. And I was also tipped off at probably at the beginning of this point by another attorney that he was charging a lot more than what he was allowed to be charging. And I don't know all the details on it, but there's definitely a lot of problems going on. And for some of you who don't really know Dave Reichert too well, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on at Minster Elevator after he came in there. Here's one thing that the plaintiff, which is me, found out. This is some information about Reichert. Defendant was convicted in Oglala County Municipal Court on December 11th, 2001 for tampering with records. Violation of, it goes on there. While Reichert was general manager of a defendant, he was disciplined in the form of a raised revocation when defendant bounced checks at his local bank. Reichert resigned his general manager position as defendant on or about March the 13th, 2006, for violation of the board's established credit policy. Reichert owes defendant, Minster Farmers, money on account for a debt incurred subsequent to his deposition testimony on July the 21st, 2005. The Reichert did not resign on March the 13th. I was talking to one of the board members shortly before this all happened, and I told the board member I had proof that they were running 2 illegal sets of books. And he said, if you got that, he said, Reichert's out of here. So I turned a copy of it over to him. And on March the 6th, they had their annual meeting, and that meeting is only for, or at least part of it, is only for the board members. And that's when, about a day or two later, that board member came back to me and he says, we fired Dave Reichert. So he did not quit on his own. He was fired. And here is a copy of a letter that I sent to Dave Reichert asking for a discovery, and it gave all the details and stuff on it. And here's one of the letters I sent to Jeff Yulo and Hankey from Crop Production Services, asking him for the same thing, because I wanted all my records, invoices, statements, anything I paid on, they're like these little stubs that said, yeah, I paid, I wanted copies of all this stuff. Maybe would have figured out what was going on, because any one person should only have one account, not 3 or 4 of them, and maybe there's more, because these are the only invoices and statements that I had. The rest of them, I threw them away, because for my taxes, I do not need them. I just keep the papers that says paid, or the ones that shows an income. But I looked, and I finally did find some of these papers. So I don't know if there's any more around or not, but anybody that's been dealing with crop production, go back and check all your papers. And don't forget, anybody can ask for a discovery, and they have to turn it over to you. Now, in a case like Snavely, like I said, this attorney, and from what I read and some of this other literature I got, he will lose his license for refusing to turn over that discovery, which cost me tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more. I'm not for sure. Well, if we find out a little more stuff in the future, one other thing. Earlier, I told you that one of my teachers when I was in grade school asked me if I would work for her, or the class would work for her for 30 days, starting at a penny the first day, then to 2 cents the second day, then to 4 cents, and to 8 cents, just keep doubling it for 30 days. I don't know if anybody thought about it or even had a chance to try to figure it out. On the 30th day, you would be making $5,368,704. Now, there's 25 years. Back then, I paid most of my bills, on time, because I tried to prepay everything. But and I know there's times where I did have to pay some interest, because sometimes I didn't want to put fertilizer on in the fall of the year, and I didn't want to put the bill, pay the bill until after the first year for tax reasons. I paid some interest. So even starting out with a small amount of interest, and you can see when I showed you 2 of these invoices in a 2-year period, they just about doubled, just strictly on interest alone from what they were illegally charging. Now, just think of how many times you were screwed over. And you didn't start out with a penny like I didn't start out with a penny. We started out in hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars. So anytime you you don't realize how much you're being taken advantage of. And what I've found out is that most companies are illegally charging interest. There's only a couple that I know of that are actually legal. Thank you for your time, and I hope I wasn't too boring. And if you come up with a little bit more stuff later, or if you have any comments or anything, feel free to say what you want to. Now, these case with the Minster farmers lasted 4 years, and I got a stack of papers. I don't know if this table would even hold them all. And I got a bunch from crop production. So I could only show you just a few, and I'm a poor speaker. But just make sure you always check your invoices, your statements. Make sure that on the accounts. Make sure you're not being charged double. Do a little math, like this, where it shows principal balance of $24,000 versus this one here shows $19,500 some odd dollars. You'll find quite a few cases. Now there are a lot of elevators and other businesses that will do a good job. There's nothing to worry about. And about 3 years ago, the statutory rate of interest was about 3%. And look at how many places was charging 18, 24%. That's all illegal. And just look how much money they have taken from you. And according to what the Supreme Court ruled, you can go back to March the 26th of 2008. And you're going to have to check with your attorney on this, because I'm not an attorney and I cannot give any legal advice. But do some checking, because you may have a heck of a lot of money coming back. One thing I was going to talk on for just a little bit, I forgot to. Since this lawsuit with Minster farmers, I have talked to a lot of attorneys from the local level clear up to the state level. And they said, and they saw stuff that was going on that wasn't right. And they said, anytime you catch an attorney doing something illegal, make sure you turn them in. That's the only way you're ever going to stop this. And anytime one attorney realizes that another attorney has done something illegal, he is required to turn him in too. Otherwise, he's also in trouble. And there's a lot of cases in here where people will be in trouble. We're going to be turning a lot of this stuff over to the disciplinary council. And it's at the Supreme Court building in Columbus. We just have to get the stuff offline. And when it comes to doing stuff like that, I'm completely illiterate. But thanks to a friend, we're going to be able to get this all done. And thanks to my friend too, for helping me get, with the help of the internet, to get this out to everybody. Thank you.